like gender as like the construct, or gender as like the political discourse type?
Gender as like, yeah, like the spectrum.
Oh, the spectrum. I'd say my parents taught me the traditional way of gender. So a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and patriarchy is real. In terms of like gender, more of like as a spectrum, understanding that gender is not just, perhaps not just male or female, that would be, kind of discovered that myself online, on Tumblr especially. I don't know, maybe just because like I'm a huge fangirl of like a lot of stuff, and then like they like to talk about that a lot. It's a lot of girls who are very into gender and sexuality and stuff like that. So through the fandoms, I guess, like I learned that like, okay, like there's like non-binary, some people like are trans. Like I discovered my like transgender through fan fiction. Yep, please don't put that in the video. But yeah. I grew up in a quite like straight and cis society, and my school was pretty straight and cis. So there was more of a sense of sexuality exists, the LGBT community exists, but we're not really going to talk about it because it makes us uncomfortable. But now in university, I'm in occupational therapy, and we're learning essentially, well, right now we're learning about discrimination, race, power, privilege, so we touched on a lot of topics, and one of the topics that we touched on was gender, and how like, because we are going to be medical professionals in the future, how like we can't, you know, accidentally offend our client. We have to understand that we will meet a lot of people on a broad spectrum of race, gender, sexuality. So yeah, so, and our teacher was a queer woman, and she was like a huge advocate for everything. And so she kind of said like, you know, like, she kind of explained to people who didn't understand what genderqueer was, non-binary, how like, you know, there are more than two genders and things like that. Yeah. There's, I guess, I listen to a few like queer artists who either don't really specify gender in their songs, or yeah, like I don't really, let me think. The only thing that's coming to mind is Harry Potter, because J.K. Rowling and her whole scandal. I did read a book once, like a long time ago, at the straight cis school I went to, where it was like taboo subject, gender. And then like, it was a little short story about like two people who fell in love, and one of them was genderqueer. I think that was like the only like direct hardcore thing about gender that I really touched on. There's an artist I listen to these days, Youngblood, and his songs not necessarily like talk about gender, but he himself is a huge advocate of gender equality, and he's like, I wouldn't say gender fluid, but like he's very comfortable with his sexuality and gender. He wears like dresses and like talks a lot about it, and like super comfortable. So it's more like I listen to his songs and then I think about him being fabulous. So yeah. The walls of my bedroom, because they were pink, purple, but I chose that myself. It's funny because like I was like 10 when I chose it, and you know, that's when the age when like girls are like, I love pink. But you know, because nothing's restricting them from loving stuff really. So I loved pink. And I remember like a year later, I started regretting it because I'm like, oh, I don't want my friends to come like to my place, see my pink walls. And some of them did make fun of me. And I just kept thinking like, oh, I don't want to be a girly girl. I don't want to be like, you know, a superficial, like stereotypical girl that like people don't like and people make fun of. So I was like, oh, Mom, can I like paint my walls blue? And she's like, no, it's like too expensive. And I just remember being like kind of ashamed of that for a while. Now I'm like, screw it. Like pink is like the best color in the world. But that's like the big thing that comes to mind because like all my walls are pink. And yeah. My bed, like the covers were always a variation of like girly patterns, pink, red, purple, and all the like. And like a lot of these things, like I remember my mom being like, pink is for girls, and like she gendered a lot of things for me. So she was like, you can't choose, I don't know, like this blue cover because like it's for boys. So like things like that kind of like remind me of some stuff. My clothes, I'd say. Again, mother was very controlling, and so she would not let me wear anything oversized. Black was, well, she was a bit extreme, of course, but a lot of things were also gendered. Like you can only wear pink. Like so much of my wardrobe was pink when I was a kid. It was. What else? The furniture my mom bought me, I really like it though. It's like this kind of like Victorian style, cream white, very fancy looking like set of furniture. So like the bed frame and everything, and like I remember really liking it, and all my friends like commenting saying like it's so pretty, like, but also with the like connotation of like it's so girly. Yeah, my room was very gendered, I feel. I think I've yo-yoed between like the, how to say, like the liberal socialist justice warrior where like, you know, I accept everything, and then the kind of rad feminist, there are only two genders, and borderline transphobic stuff. And I'd say on the internet, if that counts as like a really huge and toxic community, Tumblr again. It's there was like these people who were saying like, you know, I respect you as a trans person, but you know, like I guess like they've had encounters with like those radical trans people, like, you know, who are like to the point, like the very, very small minority of trans people who are like don't use the word woman, or like we're kind of how to say, like stepping on like the women's rights and stuff. And then there was where was I going with this? Yeah, so both of these camps were like fighting with each other like really hard. I was more of a spectator, but like I kind of witnessed this like whole like debacle like about gender in the community, saying like them just fighting with each other, and like just a debate between like, is gender like only two, or is gender like a whole spectrum? And then like yeah, but there's a difference between sex and gender and all that. So I think in high school we had like perhaps a debate in class, and it was the boys versus like the more open-minded people, and then the boys were like saying stuff like there are only two genders, trans people are, not so nice word, and like it was just more like debates, people getting angry at each other, and just people just believing that trans people don't deserve rights, or that they are inherently lying, trying to get attention, are inherently the gender that they were born with and stuff. And like that's mostly what I've witnessed, like just people having very opposing views and just yelling at each other. Or I've had discussions like in university of people who already had the same opinion on gender, were open about it, but like I felt like it was kind of like an echo room, like I think gender is a whole spectrum and we should give trans people rights, and other people were like, yeah, you're right, yeah, you're right. So I think it was more like a validation talk than actually like, we are going to discuss about gender for real. So, yeah.
Gender.
Oof. Coming from a very traditional like Chinese background, parents are homophobic, traditional. So kind of going back to before, I'd say it's given me an example of what not to think and of what not to be. I sometimes witness, online people talking about like Asian culture and how they're very they're still quite closed-minded, they're not there yet in terms of accepting the LGBT plus community and like ideas of there being more than just like two genders. I don't know, I think it just showed me that I should be better than that. And that, like, why be closed-minded and hurt people? It literally costs you nothing to just accept people as who they are and, be open-minded. So, yeah, it's kind of great being a youth now because I feel like we're more open-minded, especially than like the older generation. I feel like we're open to learning. So being in the youth culture that's more open-minded now enables us to talk more about these issues, to discuss, maybe not effectively yet, but like still like able to talk about it and have the chance to be more open-minded with the idea of gender. I think also there's like more people who are in like youth culture who are comfortable if they are like in the community to express themselves and say like, this is who I am, accept it if you want, like if not, like whatever. So I think like it's giving us good examples of what gender is. Like it's not this big scary thing. It's not going to ruin your life, like even if you have traditional values, like you can keep your traditional values and like other people can, be open-minded and like respect gender. A woman, girl, female, feminine, dainty, passive, nurturing, caring, expecting me to perhaps have a less intense career so that I can take care of the children in the future because that's what's expected of me. Being slightly inferior to the future man that I'm going to marry because men's egos are so fragile that I have to not be more successful than them or else they're gonna cry and leave me. That kind of like really the traditional idea of like what a woman should be. Them also saying like, not exactly saying as a woman, but saying like men are not emotional. So implying that woman, me, have to be emotional, but also saying, yeah, just like a negative view about women and stuff. And oh yeah, how like women cannot have jobs in the STEM field because we are incapable of being serious about it or something. But yeah, a bunch of stuff. I'd say at this moment it'd be cultural identity in the sense of I am proud of being an Asian woman versus in the past I wasn't. Like as a child, I think nowadays with like the insurgence of Asian culture being more seen in mainstream media, I see myself more in media and I can learn to love my face and my different features that are not Caucasian. So yeah, so right now, like that's what matters to me most. Yes, especially because my parents are immigrants. Like they grew up in China, raised and grew up. They came here when they were like less than 30. And then I was not born here, but pretty much raised, like born and raised here. So there's like a language barrier between us. There's a cultural barrier because they still think kind of in the past, like, like they have these ideas like if you hug your man, like your male friend, that means that like everyone thinks you're dating or stuff like that, or you have to keep a distance between your male friends and everything. More traditional values and also things that are more inherently in China versus here, like Western and Eastern culture are vastly different in many cases, especially gender. I'd say nowadays we can see it clearly. So yeah, it's really difficult to sometimes, try to talk to my parents about it, or them bringing up like a political situation or like a the gender situation, and saying like something derogatory perhaps, or like having opinions that differ from mine, and me either deciding to shut my mouth and keep the peace, or try to explain and perhaps like I don't know, have like an argument, and maybe them seeing me in a different light and it affecting like our family dynamic. So yeah, it's really, really hard. I'll start with culture because that's like the easiest for now. If I could go back, I would try not to have that phase where I wanted to be a white Caucasian girl, stemming from, you know, insecurities. Yeah, no, like as a kid when you grow up, like I went to schools where I was like literally the only Asian person, and everyone would be like, why are your eyes so small? And they like do like the eye pulling thing. Why is your nose so small? Why is your face so flat? Blah, blah. And just like, you know, I'd wish I had like the mentality back then of being like, you know what, you suck. And like, shut the hell up, you know, because like out of like this entire situation, you look like an idiot, not me, you know? I don't know, just like, if only I was born confident about myself culture-wise, I think it would have saved me a little bit of trouble in the past. Generational, maybe I would have picked my battles a little bit more in terms of with my parents, because, you know, when you're a teenager, you know, like your hormones are like really crazy and you just want to be sometimes like a little bit aggressive, like, you know, like stand my ground on, because like it ended up hurting me more. It didn't change anything. And I was like realizing that, like, you know, by doing things differently, perhaps like not being antagonistic towards them, but more being more mature than them, and like, you know, kind of ignoring it for now, knowing that maybe one day they'll understand, but, you know, like you can't keep hitting like a wall, you know, like you have to walk away at some point. So I would have done that maybe. In terms of gender was the third one? Yes. I'd say maybe in my teenage years, I hung out with some people who were questionable in the LGBT community, but like they were like questionable people, and I was kind of gullible as well at that time, and they weren't really like the people you want to follow. Like they had quite a few problems, and I just kind of like ate up what they said about gender. I'm not going to repeat it, but I kind of ate up what they said. I kind of like followed them. I was like, yeah, like everything you're saying is right. Everyone else is wrong. I'll be like antagonistic. Like I kind of alienated a few like real friends during that time, because I was so focused on being like, on seeing like, oh my God, like I'm part of like the LGBT community, and I finally have like friends who are in that community. Like everything they say is true. Turns out it wasn't. And I should have, you know, thought a bit more, questioned a bit more what they were saying, what they were doing. And I was like, is this really a good example of the community to other people? Like, you know, like this is kind of the reason why sometimes, you know, people you like don't like the community, because they take these people, like the rowdy, the less idealistic people, and say like, this is everyone. So like, yeah, I wish I didn't hang out with them as much. Hell no. It's like, again, opposite. Like I think coming from somewhere where I was so clearly opposite from what was around me and what was taught to me, like I learned to analyze everything a little bit more. So like I now at least, like I don't really easily follow what other people say about me. You know, like I think about it, unless if they make me discover like, oh my God, I was that all along or something. But you know, like I'll make my own decision. I'll take your opinion or like other people's thoughts like in mind, and like, you know, I'll keep it in mind, but I won't let it like take control. So yeah, I hope I understood the question. One good thing that came out of hanging out with those not so great LGBT friends was that they made me discover punk culture, edgy culture a bit. And I was like, holy, like this is where I belong and stuff. And like it kind of realized that I think, well, the little I know about like the culture, it's like, you know, it's sometimes androgynous. Like you don't have to, like, you know, screw the rules in general, which includes like, you know, gender and stuff. Like wear what you want, do what you want, say what you want. If you want to cut your hair short because, you know, like you like your hair short, and not because you want to, like, not in like a gendered sense, you know, you just want to do it because you like it, then do it. So I kind of like, it's kind of like an awakening, like I should do whatever the hell I want, even though my parents or like people around me might gender what I do. So, you know, if I wear like men's clothes, I don't know, like try to style it in a certain way. Haven't done that yet, but if I would do like, you know, people would be like, oh, like why are you doing that? I forgot where I was going with that, so I'm gonna scratch that, sorry. But yeah, so I think like that culture really actually helped me realize that if I want to do things that are not feminine, that are not like girly or anything, like I can do it, like because I want to, and like if other people are gonna say otherwise, then screw them. Other moments in my life, 3 moments in my life. I think at some point, post teenage years, like the color pink, you know, is like this huge thing where like girls, if you don't want to be like other girls, then you're not gonna like pink, you know. But at some point I was like, that's kind of bull, you know. I literally, like, I love pink. Pink is like an amazing color. And like, it's also like, I think I like just had some guy friends who also didn't care, and they would wear pink too. And I was like, yeah, like people who don't care, who are like not controlled so intensely by like these gender expectations, are the most confident, the most attractive, and like stuff like that. And I was like, okay, like I don't care anymore. So confidence boost up a bit. Third, I'd say, oh, yes. At my like high school with like the straight cis people, there was one person that I met that was trans, but like I didn't know at first. Like I was just really good friends with them. So they're oh my god, I don't want to mess up. They're a trans male. So they like, yes, trans male. And I remember like at first I knew them like as a woman, but like, you know, like before they transitioned. And like I just really got to know them. And then like I lost contact with them, and then like a year later I met them again at a convention, and you know, they took tea and everything, so like they transitioned. And I remember just like asking them some like ignorant questions, like, so like if you like you know, like what gender are you attracted to? And then he was like, oh, girls. And I remember asking like, so does that mean you're like gay or lesbian? So yeah, so I asked him like a bunch of really ignorant questions, but he was very nice about it, because obviously I wasn't trying to like be mean or anything. I just really didn't know. And that was like, I think that was like really early on, like my first encounter with the LGBT community. And then he was saying like, oh, you know, it doesn't really work that way. Like, you know, it's just like, I am a man. I've always been a man, and I like women, and that's it, you know, and like that's that. And like that opened the gate for me. I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of things I don't know. And I felt kind of bad for asking. When I was asking, I was like, oh my god, like, am I literally an idiot? But you know, like you learn from your mistakes. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Your your reputation is kind of at stake if you are perceived to be someone who talks a lot about gender and LGBT issues and stuff like that, people think you're a social justice warrior with the bad connotation, or the radical lesbian, or like a lot of stuff like that. So I'd say like talking about gender is essential, but there are still a lot of closed-minded people, or people who think that they're open-minded but don't want to broach that subject at all, that are like stopping you from doing it. Because if you talk about it, they're not interested in this because, you know, they're not affected and they don't care. They're just a bystander. So it doesn't help when you're trying to actually talk about it and they're just being like, oh, like it's gender, like why are we talking about this? Like you're so obsessed with gender, or like are you trans? Like are you gay or something? Like is this why like you're so like involved with this community? And like, you know, it's like, no, be a decent human being is like rock bottom in terms of like decency. So I don't know, there's just like, you know, people aren't exactly there yet. Like I'd say like we're doing good, but we could do so much better. And yeah, main barrier, that's that. And my parents potentially beating my ass if I talk to them about anything. Being involved in the community, mostly being involved in online communities, especially that advocated for things like this, that were open-minded, that taught me how to be open-minded, that essentially informed me. And then like, you know, like by having like a crumb, like I started like searching myself and being like, okay, what exactly does this mean? Like, what is the issue? You know, like what's wrong with this? Like, why are so many people like so not obsessed, but like why are so many people like talking about this all the time? Like, you know, what's the issue? And then I got into the debate myself because I was like, it's not an issue, guys. Like, you guys are just being mean or something like that. Or, yeah, so, I forgot the question. Sorry.
It was like, how and why has your conception of gender
Changed, yes. Yeah, just like the fact that media is so open these days, well, way more open than before. And also that as I grew older, I had more access to media, that it taught me. And I was on the good side of media as well. So yeah, yeah, it all like taught me. I'd say if there's the occasion, like if someone brings it up, I'm not just gonna sit by and let them like, and if they, you know, they say something that's false or something that's like derogatory or ignorant, I don't want to sit by and just, you know, let them do that to keep the peace or something. I'd like to speak up, you know, like I'm saying that now, we'll see at the moment, but in class too, like for some reason, gender and race like is always the stuff where people get most hyped up about. And so yeah, just like trying to like talk up and tell people that sorry, that's my phone. Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, just like yeah, I just don't want to be silent. I don't think I'll actively, like, unless there's need to, I don't think I'll actively just go into social circles and be like, hey, like, you want to talk about gender? But yeah, like I would just like, you know, if someone says something that seems like, or they do something and it's like, oh, that's not exactly how this works, you know, like let me try to educate you as nicely as possible so that you don't become defensive and is actually like, you know, that you're actually open and receptive to what I'm telling you. And like, you know, maybe we can discuss, maybe like I can learn something new from you, and hopefully there'll be less closed-minded people in the world.
A couple.
As many. Invest in education, like goddamn, like what are they like? It's pretty sad how little you learn in school about these things, which I think are like not even just like making a whole class about it, making a class about general things in society, you know, that you can actually start to have a debate in and like start to see that there are safe spaces, and maybe just learn, have that little opening that some people need to actually become like a true advocate. Yeah, I'd say like more education for sure. Maybe I would invest more in healthcare in like a roundabout way. I definitely invest more in healthcare as a leader, but in a roundabout way for gender, maybe like research versus like healthcare gets money, but research also gets money, because I think there was this thing that gender in like medicine is like with diagnoses and stuff like that, it's kind of needs to be like more studied for women and for people of color, because you know, the standard being the straight white man is sometimes harmful to people who are not a straight white man. So I definitely do something about that and invest in like social communities, you know, give them like more money to do the activities that they need to create more safe spaces. And yeah, that's all I can think of. I think that I won't really change anything, because I think like as of now, what I'm doing with like with like my environment and like with who I associate with, like I'm doing as much as I can. Like, you know, like even if a friend comes on my doorstep and like, you know, they don't know anything about gender, like I'll educate them. But right now I'm surrounded by people. I try to surround myself around people who think like me a bit. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't really do anything more or less as of now.